What is up, guys, and welcome to another video. This one is a little bit different, but I feel as though it's important and probably going to be quite relevant for a lot of people who are watching. This is something which I've experienced before, something which no doubt every successful individual and business owner, entrepreneur has experienced at some point in their life. And the purpose of this video is to help you guys navigate through it so that it doesn't suck as much as it can suck. Now, what I'm talking about is the lonely chapter. So this is something maybe you've heard about before. It's usually a transitional period of grinding, building, and evolving, which often comes at a cost. And that cost is social life, companionship, emotional connection. It tends to be a period of isolation where you're outgrowing your older self. You're opening and starting a new chapter. You're not where you want to be. You want to get out of this place where you currently are. And it usually does suck for quite an extended period of time until you kind of get to where it is that you want to go. Now, it's quite apparent to me now, upon reflection and looking back at my career path and the steps which I took, that I was definitely in this lonely chapter. And probably I was in that lonely chapter for longer than I should have been. Definitely extended it. And I didn't need to be in that chapter for such a long period of time. So for you to understand, let me set the scene. I've explained this story before in previous videos. Maybe some of you who are new here don't know fully, but let me break it down for you. In 2016, I was a co-owner of a gym. It was pretty social. There was lots of clients coming in. There was other coaches coaching out of that gym who I was good friends with in the city. Had loads of friends. Social life was great on a weekend. I was making money, but I wasn't making a huge amount of money. There was kind of a limit to how much money you could charge as a personal trainer in Newcastle. But, life wasn't bad. But for me, I'd always been very ambitious. I knew I wanted more. I always do this thing where I kind of predict what my life would be like a year in advance, 2 years in advance, if I keep doing the things which I'm doing at that point in time. And I knew that things weren't going to progress. It was going to plateau pretty much. So I said goodbye to my friends, business partners. I went to my family house in Leeds, stayed there for just over a month just to kind of get myself sorted out. The hardest thing, without a doubt, was the fact that I'd been making a little bit of money, but then I went to zero because my main form of income was coaching clients. And then all of a sudden I was not coaching clients anymore. I had like a supplement sponsorship at the time that was paying me $1,000, which just kind of was getting me by. But very quickly, I set up a website and just really started hammering the social media, primarily YouTube, filming everything and editing myself. So I wanted to move to London. I wanted to be where the action was. And at that time, I didn't really know anybody in London. I ended up moving there because I wanted to have a place of my own and I wanted to have a fairly nice environment to film. So I ended up getting an apartment, which I definitely couldn't afford at the time, but it was a bit of a gamble and a risk which I took so that I could have a nice place to film and focus on filming my videos. Now, this was a weird time for me because it was the first time that I'd ever actually lived by myself. There's pros and cons to living alone. This probably deserves a separate video by itself. The pros of living alone is you can be incredibly productive because there are no distractions. You literally get up, you get straight to work, and nobody's interrupting you. You have an environment of peace where you can do exactly what it is you need to do, which is perfect for me because I had an environment where I could film wherever I wanted to film, and I just got the work done without anybody trying to pull me away from doing work, which was great. But the downside of that was I didn't know how to deal with extended periods of isolation because I had, throughout my entire life, always lived with other people. I'd been living with my family up until the age of 18. Then when I moved to university, I was surrounded by university students and I lived in halls of residence. Then I had accommodation living with 5 of my university friends for 2 years. Then after that, I did a season in Marbella, living with lots of other people. Then came back to Newcastle and lived in a house with 6 people for years. And then kind of downgraded before I moved, living with 2 other people. But it was always very social and I always had company in the place which I was living. So I didn't know how to navigate through this new period of just being alone for extended periods of time and just having silence. And then on top of that, I didn't have much of a social life. Because I was working so much, I did have only these little windows where I could socialize. And one of the reasons why I moved to Kingston was because of this friend who I was going to be spending a lot of time with, or at least I thought I'd be spending a lot of time with, because he did what I did. He was big on social media, big in fitness, similar physiques, whatever. But the more time I got to spend with him, I started to realize that he had an unhealthy relationship with drugs. Let's just say that. The guy used to love taking cocaine, loved to smoke weed. And I could not be around a person like that, despite the fact that their career was actually very successful. They were making loads of money, they were making more money than me. But to spend a lot of time with somebody who is doing and abusing substances, they turn into not a nice person. And their personality changes, and they could be a bit of a dick, to be honest. And it's not someone who you want to be spending time with. So this one person who I was supposed to be friends with, and was the main reason why I moved to Kingston, was a person now I had to distance myself from. And then a lot of the times, the opportunities where I could socialize usually involved going out for drinks, staying out late, partying, nightclubs, things like that, which I didn't want to do because I had so much work on. I had to be at the top of my game. So that did not help. And then on top of that, I was in a long distance relationship where I was going extended periods of times without seeing my partner. Didn't have any family. They were in a completely different city. So things were pretty tough. And the weirdest thing about all this was, despite the fact that I was the most popular I'd ever been online, I was the loneliest I had ever felt in reality. I think in 2017, I gained about 300,000 YouTube subscribers. So that social media was doing very well. Business was doing good. Finances were finally, looking pretty healthy. I had a lot of online clients because of the success of the YouTube channel. But there was a lot of conversations which were being had through a screen. So even though you're having conversations and you're socializing, it wasn't meeting that, human in-person interaction. In fact, the only interactions that I was having in person with humans was when I went to the gym and I would say hello to the receptionist. There'd be some days where, the days where I wouldn't do my calls, I actually wouldn't open my mouth and speak any words until the evening. So I would go to the gym and the receptionist would say hello and they'd just make this weird noise like, oh, because I hadn't said anything to anyone. And I don't think I helped myself because I didn't really want to train with other people or socialize with other people, but it was because I was just so busy. And even though I could have trained with other people, I personally like to train by myself. And I realized that because the schedule was so hectic, I would only have a very tight window in the day where I could train, and it would change from a day-to-day basis. So I could never really plan and organize a training session with another gym goer because they would either be late or there'd be unnecessary yapping. I just needed to go to the gym and do what I needed to do in the short period of time, which I did have available. So now that I look back at this point in time, I can see myself. I'm physically fit and healthy from the outset, but mentally I was not. I was unhappy. I was dealing with a lot of issues which I had no real way of understanding how I should navigate through it. No friends, nobody to ask advice from, no mentors, family were far away, plus they wouldn't really have understood what it was I was going through. Partner, very far away, thousands of miles away, going extended periods of time without seeing them, and to be honest with you, the communication was not very good now that I look back. So all it would have taken is for me to open up and have a conversation with somebody who would have understood what it was that I was going through and given me advice on what it was that I could have done in order to make myself feel better. Thankfully, in today's day and age, there is somebody that you can reach out to and speak to. And that is why I'm happy to partner with BetterHelp in today's video. BetterHelp is online therapy that makes it easy to talk to a licensed therapist whenever and wherever it works for you. No awkward waiting rooms, no pressure to open up before you're ready, just somebody who's trained to listen, to help, and to walk you through this chapter. You don't need to be in a crisis. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need a space that's yours to think, to feel, and to breathe. If you're in that lonely chapter right now, like I was, this is your reminder that you don't have to go through it alone. All you got to do is fill in a quick form, get matched with a therapist, and take that first step. privately on your own terms. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists at any time. Go to betterhelp.com/Mike Thurston to get 10% off your first month. Now, thankfully, things did start to get better, but they only got better once I'd reached the lowest of the lows. And thinking back, that was definitely when my relationship came to an end. So, you lose your partner, you lose your best friend. You feel like you're even more isolated. All you can do is think about that partner, and it's just one of those things that only really heals with time. So there was a couple of months which were definitely peak lows, but it was up from that point on. And because I was, a single man once again, I was, in a position where I could start to go out and socialize a little bit more and not feel guilty about socializing. I was going on a few more dates. I was getting back into the flow of being a single man who was dating, getting the confidence back, which, surprisingly, I actually lost that confidence when it had come to dating. But I was also in a position where I'd started to build that online presence. So I was in a position where I could also reach out to other people with an online presence and collaborate with them and spend time with them. And in 2017, 2018, social media was a little bit different then. There were fewer people to collaborate with. Thankfully, there were a few in the UK who I could meet up with. But it also forced me to travel and meet up with people around the world who were also doing similar things, which I was. And being able to combine work with socializing was the key to feeling that much more fulfilled, because you could go do something that was like productive, collaborate, create, but also have fun doing it at the same time. And I think one of the biggest things which also helped was the fact that I'd relocated to being more central in London, moved to a new apartment, Earl's Court. I mean, not only was the apartment better because financially I was doing better, I could afford a better place. That has a massive impact on your overall well-being, just changing the environment, the place that you're spending a lot of time in. But it also meant it was way easier for me to just nip out and, meet up with people, because it was just a short underground tube journey away from. And then again, on top of this, I've finally got my first member of staff, which was my cameraman, who ended up becoming my best friend. This probably had, again, one of the biggest impacts on improving my overall well-being and getting myself out of that lonely chapter, because now I was spending a lot of time with somebody who was fun to be around. Filming with somebody who's like your best friend doesn't even feel like work. You're spending time together, planning videos, filming videos, editing videos. It was amazing. And I wasn't with Louis at the time, all the time, but there was 2 weeks out of every month where we would basically stay together, we would travel together, and we would go and do fun things. And that was the period, 2019, where I'd finally figured, like, okay, yeah, this is now the point where I'm really enjoying my life. So upon reflection, I'd ask myself, okay, what would I do differently? And what could you guys potentially do to avoid yourself being in this situation that I was currently in? How do you get out of this lonely phase quicker? I think the first thing I would have done is hire somebody sooner. Because I probably was a little bit too much of a control freak and I wasn't used to having members of staff, I just felt like, oh no, I can do it by myself. I want to do it my way, I can do it by myself. So it just meant that a lot of the filming and editing which I was doing, which was required for the career that I'd kind of chosen, just meant that I was always alone and isolated, spending extended periods of time just on my laptop. So that didn't help. I could have very easily found somebody sooner to work with. And that's one very important thing which you guys need to understand when it comes to hiring people. You want to hire people that obviously are very good at what they do, but hire somebody who is going to be fun to be around, someone who is, quite sociable, because you are going to be spending a lot of time with them. So it helps massively if you have naturally good chemistry with that person. It might start off with one member of staff to begin with, but then it might end up being 2, 3, and then eventually when you have a team of staff which you see on a regular basis, that really helps you to not feel so lonely and isolated. But obviously the issue with that is it costs money. And when you're going through this period of transition where you're just starting from nothing, you've got to take care of yourself first before you can start paying wages and, hiring staff. Something else which I would have done differently is just got out of Kingston. I think for me, there was no point in me being there. Once I'd obviously come to the realization that I can't spend this time with the person that I thought I was going to be spending a lot of time with, my friend, the one who loved a bit of cocaine. I should have just got out of there. But I think because I was just reluctant to move houses again, I just stayed there, but I didn't need to stay there. I would have either gone more central, which would have meant it would have been way easier to just quickly meet up with people instead of having to really plan my date. Because from Kingston to central London, it would take an hour. So it's like an hour of commuting there and back just to go and, meet up with someone. So I just ended up not wanting to go into central because it would take too much time. And I didn't like the faff of having to get on the train and tube. So I was just kind of isolated in Kingston. I would have also forced myself to network and reach out to people more than I did. I mean, of course, to begin with, I don't think I really had much time to do a lot of socializing and networking, but I think, after a couple of months, I was in a position where I could at least try and reach out to a few people who were doing a similar thing to me, and combined work with socializing. I didn't understand how important it is to socialize and how if you actually can combine two together, then it's like a win-win thing. And for me, I'm naturally more of an introverted person. So I just thought, I'll just, stay by myself and do what it is that I need to do because that's just how I am. That's clearly didn't work out for me. And I should have made more of an effort to, even the people that I would have wanted to network with, I shouldn't have been so afraid to reach out because of that fear of rejection. Now, I did have a second batch of this lonely chapter, but nowhere near as extreme. But it was maybe a couple of months of discomfort when I decided to make the move from the UK to Dubai. And this is often maybe something you would experience when you relocate, but hopefully it doesn't last that long. Now, for me, I knew Dubai was a place I wanted to move to. I just wanted to get out of the UK because the weather was miserable. I wanted to switch things up. I wanted to be in a place that was going somewhere, which had loads of great gyms where I was open to film, and Dubai ticked all the boxes. So I moved here, but I didn't know anybody here. And even though it's much easier to socialize when you already have a pretty strong personal brand and an online presence, there was just less people here at the time who I could connect with. Back in 2019, there was far fewer influencers in Dubai in comparison to, the ones that are here now, particularly in the wintertime. So I remember New Year's Eve. I shouldn't have come here before New Year's Eve, but I did. I came alone because I wanted to get everything set up. And then it was New Year's Eve. Everybody was getting together, socializing, doing the thing which everybody does New Year's Eve. And I was hit with the reality that I was like, oh, I actually don't know anybody here. And I don't know where to go or who to hang out with. And I remember sitting on my balcony when the fireworks were going off in JBR, being completely alone, thinking, oh, this is pretty depressing. Like, why have I just... Again, I was in the UK. I was finally getting to the point where I was enjoying life and things were going good. I decided to remove myself from that situation again, place myself somewhere brand new where I didn't know anybody, and I was now once again just alone. But thankfully, that didn't last very long. Of course, when you're in a new place, the first few weeks are weird because you don't have your real friendship group and you're just getting familiarized with a completely different way of living. But I had my cameraman. He would come out for 2 weeks at a time. Obviously, when he was here, it was really good. I was forcing myself to go out and socialize. But again, it involved a lot of nights out, partying and drinking, which was not good for business and obviously me physically. And then I managed to actually get myself into a relationship, within the first 3 months, which wasn't the plan, but ended up happening. So it could have very easily been a repeat of 2017, of that lonely year. But because this time I was better prepared financially, social status, personal brand, and just the experience from doing it before, I knew how to get myself out of it. So it only really lasted for, maybe a few weeks. But apart from that, it ended up being one of the best decisions which I had ever made. And it's funny when I think about it, I'm making this video, it's almost like I'm making it for one of my members of staff because he is also going through this chapter of his life. He's said goodbye to an older career, which he's had. He wants to start this new career. He doesn't have much of a social presence. He's just ended a relationship with his girl because his girl wanted too much of his time and he couldn't give it to her. They were arguing all the time. So he said, look, I've got to call it a day. He lives in Jersey, which is this very small remote island just off the coast of the UK. So there's not much going on there. He was there primarily for his girlfriend, who he's no longer with, and then he's got his family there as well, but he just wants to network and socialize with other like-minded people, but there isn't any there in Jersey. So I'm doing my very best to bring him to Dubai so that at least he can spend more time with me and other like-minded individuals. And also, he now has a lot of clients now who are based here, so he gets to spend more face-to-face time with his clients. It's just going to be much better for him. So I'm doing my best as a mentor to try and help him navigate his way through this situation. Now, I want to give you a couple pieces of advice before I finish this video. First of all, I think it's very important to relocate to where the action is, where there's a lot going on, where there's a lot of like-minded individuals like yourself who are just wanting to make it in life. Now, there's a lot of places in the world where you can relocate to. I wouldn't advise going to Dubai just because everybody goes to Dubai. A lot of people are going to hate Dubai. Trust me, it's not for everybody. But I recommend at least trying new places. You don't have to dedicate yourself to being there for an extended period of time. Just give it a try for a couple of months and see if you like it or you don't like it. But you need to be where the action is, because it's much easier for you to reach out to people who are in a similar situation to you, and you can meet up and you can combine that social life with work at the same time. I would also recommend allocating time to socialize and to date. Right? Now, I know you're not going to have much free time when you are in this chapter of your life, because whenever you're building a business or you start from scratch, it just does require a lot of work, particularly if you're an entrepreneur. There's never not a period where there's no work to do. There's always work to do. But if you force yourself to just constantly do work, you are going to be miserable. So you have to force yourself and give yourself these little slots where you just have a little break from work and you go out and socialize. Go to networking events. Go and join clubs or Pilates classes or high rocks classes, whatever it might be. Just these healthy, productive environments, communities where you're going to find like-minded people. And I would also say dating is important. I've experienced this before. If I go an extended period of time without physical touch and having sex, I'm fucking miserable. I think it's very important. So you need to have a little bit of time where you do allocate to dating. But I think it's quite important to be upfront with whoever it is that you're going to start dating and say, look, my life is hectic right now. I'm in a transitional period where I just need to focus on my career. It's the absolute priority. Very passionate about it, but it's quite difficult right now, and I do have to spend a lot of time on my career. They will understand. Hopefully they'll respect it and admire you, and they're not going to expect too much from you in terms of, how much time that you're going to spend with them. Being in a relationship is difficult. It's going to be much easier if you're already in a relationship with someone who's going to support you regardless, and they'll just respect the fact that you need a lot of time to yourself to focus on your thing. If they're not going to be respectful of that and they're going to give you a headache and they're going to complain, my advice would be to just end it. You don't need that negativity and turbulence in your life. It's much better to just call it a day and just focus on you. And a lot of the time when you do end up finishing a relationship, you just have so much more free time to just focus on you. So stay in a relationship if they're worth staying in that relationship. But if they're not, get rid. If you do live alone, you're in a situation where you don't really have any mentors, podcasts and podcasters can be your best friends and can be your mentors. I know for me, when I moved to London, I was in my apartment alone for extended periods of time. I couldn't deal with the silence. So I always had to have a podcast playing in the background. And often when I was feeling alone, didn't have anyone to speak to, listening into conversations that other experts and people I admired and respected were having with each other, I almost felt like I was a part of the conversation, and that definitely helped out. So that is that. Hopefully you now understand that this is only going to be a temporary period of life, and if you do the things which you know you need to do and you do it successfully, you're then going to face your new set of problems, but they're a much better set of problems. You're going to have too much money. You're going to have too many people wanting your time and attention that you'll have to now start mastering the art of saying no. And on top of that, because you'll be doing so well in terms of your career, your social life, and so on, women are going to start to notice that. And they're going to start queuing up to want to start going on dates. So again, from having nothing, you very suddenly have an abundance of everything. But again, this abundance of everything can also be a massive distraction, which I'm going to make another video on because no one really tells you how to navigate through the fact that when you do have it all, there's all these things which could potentially distract you and pull you away from doing the things which are working and taking that next step to elevating your career further. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you have made it to the end, you're a legend. And yeah, just understand that you're not in it alone. You know, we're all going through this, or we have gone through this, but don't be afraid to reach out to people, and don't suffer because you feel like you need to suffer. There's a lot of things that you can do to make this chapter of your life much more pleasant. See you in the next video.